Welcome to Permission Slips, a space to practice paying attention to your life with self-compassion so you can experience the wholeness, purpose, and joy you were made for. I'm Jillian DeBritz, a life and leadership coach and a recovering perfectionist, learning alongside you how to give myself permission to be human. This week, instead of having a guest on the podcast, I'm wrapping up my very first season by inviting you behind the scenes of this podcasting journey and sharing about the things that I've learned in my first 18 episodes. And you guys, I just have to say, I'm so proud of myself for recording 18 podcast episodes. I did not know if I could do this, let alone make it this far. And so I'm just grateful that you're here with me celebrating the fact that I have successfully made it through my first season. So first of all, I just want to say thank you. If you're listening to my voice in your ears right now, you are personally a part of making this work matter. I want you to know seriously how deeply it encourages me to know that you are listening wherever you are right now. Whether it's your first time listening or the 18th episode you've listened to, it matters more than I can even express that you're here and that you're giving your time to listen to these episodes. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Even just picturing you in your car, in your kitchen, on a walk, folding laundry, whatever you do as you listen, it just brings me so much joy. And it truly makes the time and the energy I've invested in learning how to create a podcast feel worthwhile. It's not just for me. I really want this to serve you in a way that encourages you to live more gently and compassionately, and treat yourself with more kindness so that you can be exactly who you're made to be in the world with nothing holding you back. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here. I wanted to take this opportunity as we head into summer and I prepare to take a break for a couple of months to rest and recover and dream about how to move forward in the fall. I really wanted to take this last episode to look back at what I've learned and to hopefully offer some encouragement to you in whatever endeavor you're considering stepping into, whatever creative project you're thinking about. I hope that some of what I've learned will be helpful to you too. So in no particular order, here are 7 things that I've learned since starting a podcast. Number 1, it's okay to be a verbal processor. Listen, anyone in my life, especially my dear husband, Corey, could have told you years ago that I think best out loud. I joke with friends that I don't know what I think until I hear myself say something, and then I decide if I agree with myself or not. And so there is something really helpful for me about saying words out loud, and especially in a conversation with another person that helps me clarify my own thoughts. It's really what I do as a life coach. When I'm in sessions with clients, I'm asking them questions to try to help them hear themselves think. There's something about speaking out loud that brings a different sort of clarity that we can't have when we're just inside our own heads. And so even just in conversation, realizing that I understand myself more clearly and my own thoughts and beliefs and questions and experiences when I'm listening to other people describe theirs. So all of this is part of being a verbal processor, is understanding the world through the lens of words out loud. So that is something that I have often joked about in myself, but I'm recognizing in this podcasting sphere, it's more true than ever that verbal processing is how I'm wired, and it brings me life and joy to get to talk with people with my out loud voice and hear them share their own thoughts back and forth in real time. So also, as someone who cares a lot about words and who cares about sharing words of hope and life and encouragement with others, I call myself a writer, and I have lots of different writing projects that I have worked on and continue to work on. This book project that many of you have heard me talk about that never seems to end. But writing is just really inefficient. It takes so much hard work and so much think time. And there is something really helpful for me about saying words out loud that's a lot more efficient than writing. And it helps me get more clarity about the words I want to write when I sit down to do that work in isolation. So it's okay to be a verbal processor. Number 2, collaboration makes everything better. This is a theme that I have been learning in several areas of my life over the last many years. I used to be fiercely independent, especially when I think back to high school or college years, when you'd be assigned a group project by your teacher in class. And I would always sort of inwardly groan because I knew that meant that I was going to do everything in order for things to be at the level that I wanted them to be, recovering perfectionist over here. I really had higher standards than a lot of my peers, it felt like, and, may have a little bit of issues with control. And so I ended up taking on more than my fair share, thinking that I knew the best way. And the older I get, the more I realize I don't actually know the best way. I have gifts that matter. I have a perspective that matters, but my way is not the only nor necessarily the best way of seeing the world. And especially when it comes to creative work, collaboration is how creativity grows. There is something really magical about being in a space with someone else and watching your ideas and creativity spark ideas and creativity in the other person. And it's so interesting because I originally thought that this podcast was going to be a solo show. That was what I had envisioned. Okay, this will be a place that I will come on and record things that I want to share with people to encourage them, things that I want to write about. I'll test out some of my content from my book and I'll just talk about whatever I want. And I quickly realized that one, that felt like a lot of pressure to create that much content all the time. And two, it just wasn't as fun as having conversations with people in real time that I could learn from and grow with and to see what we could create together that was so much more magical and dynamic than anything I could create in isolation. The other piece of that, of learning to collaborate with others, and that's both in podcasting and honestly in a bunch of different projects I'm working on outside of this podcast, is that there is freedom for me as I get older and more aware of my own strengths and limitations. There's freedom in recognizing I have nothing to prove, that I'm allowed to show up as I am and invite others to show up as they are too. And it's okay for me not to know everything. I'm allowed to not have all of the information or all of the expertise or all of the research or to know everything about all the things. But the more comfortable I am with knowing that I don't know everything yet, the more joy I get in being curious and asking people questions and learning from others, both in this podcast setting and also in real life. So collaboration is becoming one of my highest values, and it didn't used to be. But there's something really beautiful that happens when we can collaborate and celebrate. And I talk about this with women a lot in groups that I lead, that I want to create spaces where we collaborate and celebrate with others instead of comparing and competing with them, because that's where we all get the best of what's possible. So collaboration makes everything better. The third thing I've learned since starting a podcast is that predictability and control are overrated. As someone who likes to know what to expect, this is hilarious to me that this has become something that I've learned the hard way. And actually, not even the hard way. It's been this really freeing, beautiful, untangling of the ways that I used to operate, where I expected myself, based a little bit on what I've heard other podcasters talk about and a little bit on how I used to function. I expected myself to sit down and type out a loose script every episode. I thought that I would have really clear questions that I would send to my guests, which I do, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, but that it would be a very strictly controlled experience so that no one would feel uncomfortable. I thought if I can control the outcome, if I can type up a script, if I can kind of prepare ahead of time, then things will be smoother and easier and it'll go the direction I want. Well, the interesting thing is, one, that's a lot of work. And two, I can't plan and prepare for what happens organically in real time with another person. It's really interesting because as I send people questions ahead of time, usually a week or so before I interview someone, I'll send them an email with all the information they need and a handful of potential questions. And I've learned to start to say, hey, these are some potential questions. I can't guarantee we're going to talk about any or all of them. I don't know that there's been a single time I've asked a guest every single question that I sent them beforehand. Because what I tell them is that there is something beautiful and organic and unpredictable that emerges in real time as we listen to one another and notice our own responses in that moment and have questions that stir up that we didn't know were going to get sparked by something one of us said. And it's just been really beautiful to get more and more comfortable dancing in the moment, as they say in the coaching world. It's actually a coaching skill. It sounds a little cheesy to say dancing in the moment, but the idea is, as a coach, that my job is to let the person I'm coaching, my client, lead the conversation, and I'm just responding to them. I'm watching their movements and I'm responding, and there's something really artistic and beautiful and fluid, but it's not scripted. It's not predictable. And so as I have these conversations with people on the podcast, it's been really, really fun to see what happens that I didn't know to plan for. And that's taken some practice to get comfortable with, but I'm really loving that. One, my coaching experience has made this podcasting transition really, really fun. I feel like I'm doing what I was made to do. And two, it's just beautiful and freeing to not work so hard trying to over prepare, but just to show up as I am and hopefully allow the people that I'm talking with and interviewing to show up as they are too, without this pressure to perform or to create a certain outcome, but just with this open-handedness and curiosity to see what emerges together. So predictability and control is overrated. The fourth thing that I have learned since starting a podcast is that you don't have to be an expert to have something to offer. You just have to be yourself. It's interesting. As I started recording, I got kind of angsty about who am I? Who am I to start a podcast? Who am I that people would want to listen to anything I have to say? And the truth is, I'm no one. I'm just a person, right? But I'm a person who is learning to discover more and more of who I'm made to be and how I'm made to live. And that process of self-discovery through prayer and as part of my spiritual journey, we're not talking about navel gazing for the sake of self-obsession. We're talking about discovering more and more fully the God-given, unique design that each of us has been created with. And as I discover more and more about who I am, it brings me energy and life and joy. And as I watch other people in my work as a coach discover more and more about who they're made to be, I see the same thing. I see energy and passion and confidence and a lightness. And I see them stand a little taller, and I see them coming to life a little more as they recognize that the things that God has placed within them are needed and are beautiful and good and unique to them. And so there's this piece of me that as I'm learning to do this work myself, I'm realizing we all need permission to show up as we are. And that's not a reminder I can hear enough, that I'm allowed to show up just as I am. I don't have to be an expert. I don't have to know the most about any of the things, but I'm allowed to just be curious and learn from others about who they are and what their journey has taught them. And that's only going to allow me to be more and more fully myself as I am willing to put myself out into the vulnerable place of not being an expert, but to be curious and open to learn from other people. It just really sets me free from imposter syndrome. It's really interesting. Several years ago, a group of writing friends and I were talking about this kind of pervasive imposter syndrome that seems to impact us all at different times and in different ways, but especially in the world of creatives. We all feel like we're just faking it. And I actually would say that's probably true about business people and leaders. And, you probably find people in every industry that feel like they're just faking it until they actually learn what they're doing and grow in confidence. And this idea of imposter syndrome was so crippling for a long time for me, where I just felt like I had to constantly prove that my voice was worthy of listening to, and I had to do everything perfectly. I had to write the most compelling argument, or I had to use the most impressive words, or I had to make sure to address any potential backlash that might come by, writing from every perspective. And it was just exhausting to try to prove that I was allowed to have a place at the creative table. As I was talking with my writing friends about this several years ago, I had this aha where I realized that vulnerability is actually the antidote to imposter syndrome. If I can just be honest and open and vulnerable about my failures and flaws and struggles and humanness, if I don't pretend to be an expert, but instead show up with all of my questions, I'm not pretending anything. I'm just being myself. And so if I'm not pretending, if I'm vulnerable, then there is no imposter. I'm just being authentic and true to who I am. And so refusing to pressure myself to be an expert and allowing myself to show up here as a human with all sorts of insecurities and fears and questions, I hope that it allows you to do the same wherever you are in your places of leadership or creativity or whatever season of life you find yourself. I really do hope that seeing a regular like me, just a regular normal person, starting a podcast, being curious with other people, struggling imperfectly, showing up messy, I hope that gives you permission to do the same, to just be yourself and to know that you being you is enough. You don't have to be an expert to have something to offer. You just get to show up and invite others to show up as themselves too. Number 5, I have learned through this podcasting journey that external deadlines make all the difference in getting stuff done. And any productivity expert probably could have told you this. And I know this in my head very well and talk about this with coaching clients all the time. However, as someone who has an allergic reaction to a deadline, it is very difficult for me to implement deadlines as a motivational tool. So here's the thing. When I first started seriously considering if this is something that I wanted to take on, everyone I talked to said consistency is key. You need to show up at the same time so people know to expect a podcast regularly. And they said you can do that monthly or biweekly, but ideally you would publish every week. And so I set that goal for myself that I was going to publish a new episode every week. And I knew that it would be ambitious and I wasn't quite sure if I could do it. But I knew that if my schedule was to post once a week, that I would be motivated to get the thing done. And it wasn't like anyone cared if I actually published at 5 a.m. on Wednesdays, which is my regular publishing schedule. But I pretended people cared. I pretended people were waiting like 5 a.m. Wednesday morning. They were waiting, watching their podcast app for that podcast to pop up. And it helped. It helped for me to imagine that people would know. They would be disappointed if I didn't produce the episode that week that I had promised myself that I would offer. So whether or not anyone would have ever noticed that I didn't publish at the same time every week, it became this external deadline for myself where I knew that this was a public thing. There is something public that people are going to know if I don't pull it off. In fact, there was actually one episode where I clicked the wrong button when I uploaded my file and didn't notice until after it had published that I had uploaded the wrong audio file. It was like a 5-minute song that someone had sent me that I uploaded instead of my podcast recording. And so I didn't notice it for a couple of hours and then deleted it and reposted at like 7. And I remember thinking, oh no, everyone is going to know that I published the wrong thing because everyone probably already tried to listen within the first 2 hours of it publishing. No, they did not. I'm sure no one did. In fact, if you did notice, let me know because that would be funny. But the reality is when we have an external deadline, when there's someone else that we're accountable to, which you guys, I hate the word accountability. As a coach, I know that we all need it. I like the word support so much better, that we all need support. We all need people on the outside saying, you can do this. I believe in you. Keep going. Don't quit. But when we have some sort of an external support system in place, whether it's a deadline or someone that's going to ask us how things are going or a goal, or, if you're thinking about running, maybe it's a race that you signed up for, or you're a musician and you signed up to participate in a music contest. Whatever the thing is, having an external deadline is motivating. And I am someone who struggles to be motivated to create things on my own. And that's hard for me to admit because I want to be disciplined enough and motivated enough as a writer that I could just bust out a book because I said I was going to, or I could just, write an article every week to submit to an online publication because I said I was going to. I am not that motivated. And it's really hard to continually think about things that I want to do, but don't because I don't have an external deadline in place. And so all that to say, having this weekly external deadline that I had set up for myself made me realize I can produce content regularly. I can put in the time every week to create a podcast, to record it, to edit it, to write show notes for it, to create social media graphics for it, to publish it and share it. I've done that every week since the beginning of March. And I am so dang proud of myself because I didn't think I could, but it just goes to show external deadlines make all the difference in getting things done. The 6th thing that I've learned since starting a podcast is that sticking with something hard builds confidence. Maybe that's obvious, but I did not know how to do any of this when I started. You guys, I want you to know I'm the least technologically savvy person that you know. And I didn't know what platform to use. I started out using Zoom and trying to edit, and I didn't know how to edit. I didn't know if I should be recording video or just audio. I didn't know what hosting platform to use. I didn't know how to push my podcast recordings out to different streaming sites. I didn't know any of the things. And I was a beginner because I'd never done it before. Of course I was, but I wasn't sure that I could do it. There's so much that I had to learn. I made a lot of mistakes. In fact, I talked about some mistakes that I made early on, and things like, even now I'm recording in my office, which is not the best place to record because you can hear semi trucks in the background. That's a mistake I learned. I shared about uploading the wrong audio file, tons of mistakes with sound and editing, and I still haven't perfected it, but I have learned so much and come so far. And the interesting thing is I'm better than I used to be. I've continued to do this thing. It doesn't take me as long to edit. I'm much faster. I also don't overthink things as much because I know that it's not worth spending the time on perfecting things that I may or may not be able to fix anyway. I don't get nervous. I'm sure I got nervous in the first couple episodes when I was recording. I know in the past, before I had my own podcast, I definitely got nervous when I was being interviewed on other people's podcasts. That was definitely a different experience. But on my end of the microphone, I don't get nervous. It's just fun. So I can look back and think, wow, several months ago, I couldn't have said any of these things, but I stuck with it. And now I'm confident in my ability. Not confident in saying I don't have anything to learn or that I've arrived or that I completely know what I'm doing or couldn't use a ton of help with all of these processes. But I believe in myself now. I believe that I am a podcaster, and that's a big deal. So sticking with something hard, it builds our confidence. And let me tell you, there were many, many weeks I didn't want to stick with it, where I have questioned, does any of this matter? Where I've felt insecure and vulnerable about what I put out in the world and thought, did I just make a fool of myself? Did I just expose to anyone that listens, however many or however few people actually listen to each episode? Did I just expose how little I actually know about anything? Or did I just make a fool of myself talking and talking and talking and saying nothing? There have been so many weeks where I've wrestled with that insecurity and wanted to quit, and I didn't. And now I feel more confident. Again, not that the insecurity isn't there, but I believe in myself now more than I did in the beginning. The seventh thing that I have learned since starting a podcast is that the process matters more than the outcome. I really don't know where this podcasting journey will take me. All I know is that I was supposed to start one. It's so interesting. It was a year ago exactly that I was at a writing conference and went to a workshop with someone who had a really successful podcast and was teaching us how to start one. And she was talking about why we should and how life-giving it was for her and how much of a creative challenge it was to create this content and all the things that I've experienced. And especially for people who are trying to write a book, you know, they talk a lot in the publishing industry about platform and really trying to prove that people want to listen to the message that you want to write about. And so she talked about that too, but I wasn't really interested in starting a podcast as a platform building strategy. I was more interested in the opportunity to use my out loud voice to speak words that people would hear with their ears and receive in a different way than they could when they read those words with their eyes. So there was something that was planted in me a year ago when I went to that conference, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. I knew, I can't even tell you why, but I knew I was supposed to start a podcast at some point. And so all last summer, I spent months and months and months working on a book proposal for the book that I still believe I will and want to write. Still believe I'm supposed to write and will write at some point, hopefully sooner rather than later. But I worked so hard on writing that I didn't have any mental space to learn this new creative outlet, this new creative pathway of podcasting. But it was always in the back of my mind. Once I finish my book proposal, that's the next thing. And so I knew as soon as I finished my book proposal, sent it out to agents who said, we love your idea and you need about 10,000 more people following you on the internet. I just all but gave up. I'm like, well, I'm not going to spend my life trying to get followers. So let me just do the next right thing. In the words of Emily P. Friedman, the next right thing. That's the name of her podcast. Highly recommend if you haven't listened to it. So my next right thing was to start a podcast. And again, people ask me, so when are you going to monetize it? Or what are you going to do with it? And my response is, I don't actually know what I'm going to do with it. I don't know where this is going. I just know I was supposed to start one. And I just know I'm asking one guest at a time to join me in this creative, collaborative process. And I know that it's fun. And I know that I'm coming alive. And I feel like I'm doing something that I was made to do that I didn't even know. I didn't even know to dream about. And so I don't know the next step in this podcasting journey. I am dreaming about people that I want to have on in the future. I have some dream guests and I have some people already planned for the end of summer and early fall, and some other ideas I'm toying around with. But I don't know big picture how this fits into my writing journey or anything else that God is asking me to do in the world. All I know is I love it. I love it. And that's enough for me. It's a creative medium that I love, and it's sparking something to life that wasn't there before. That matters more than the outcome, is just enjoying the process and starting a process, even without a clear goal or endpoint that I'm moving toward. So those are the 7 things that came to mind. I know there are many other things I could tell you that I've learned since starting a podcast, but those are the things that, as I was reflecting on the last several months and last 18 episodes of recording, that I really have learned. And I hope that as you're thinking about whatever it is that you're facing, whatever new thing you're considering, whatever dream in the back of your mind you've put on hold, but have wondered, is it possible to do that thing? I don't know where it's going to go, but I really want to try. I hope that this gives you a little spark of inspiration and confidence to do the thing. Just take the next right step. And as I take a break for summer over the next couple months, like I said, I'm dreaming about what's coming in the fall. Would you be so kind as to share any episodes that you've listened to that you love with maybe a friend or a family member? Maybe you would even be willing to share on social media to reach people that you may not think about, but are interested in what we're talking about here. It's just a huge help. I can't reach the people that I want to reach on my own. I need people like you who are willing to be generous, who are willing to share about permission slips with other people. If you're also willing to subscribe to the show, if you haven't already, and rate it and review it on whatever podcasting app you happen to enjoy, that also helps people hear about it. So over the next couple months, my plan is to take a break from podcasting. I didn't think that I was going to initially take a break. I had planned on continuing to produce an episode a week all summer because that's what you're supposed to do, right? Consistency matters, they say. I noticed in May that my energy was really dwindling. Not just in podcasting, but in life. I had so many places where I was putting energy out in creative ways, creating, building, leading, speaking, and it was so life-giving and required so much energy. And it hit me that I have not learned how to rest the way I need in order to sustain the output that I want to be able to offer into the world. I realized that any of us who are doing creative work, we need to rest too, because creativity is an output. It's a joy-filled output, but I need to learn how to replenish those creative resources inside of me. And that's something that I need to practice. So I'm excited to dream this summer. I'm excited to pull back from social media and from my newsletter, and the podcast is going to be difficult for me because I love this work, but this work of creating and producing publicly, I am recognizing the need to rest and recover from that output for the next couple months. I'm excited to dream about writing projects and coaching and creating groups for people to learn and grow together. I'm excited to dream about how God might be inviting me to spend my time and energy in the months to come. In the meantime, though, I'm going to rest. I'm taking things off my plate, scheduling as little as possible, going quiet on social media, which feels scary for someone that's trying to write a book, because they say platform means showing up consistently in all the places, and you don't get a book deal unless you have a platform. But I need rest. So I'm cultivating more margin, creating more downtime in my daily rhythm. And I'm going to give myself permission to pay attention to what my heart, mind, body, and soul need each day, as opposed to following a rigid schedule. So here's your permission slip. You're allowed to take a break too. Maybe there's an area where you're teetering toward burnout, a pace that's running you ragged, or a commitment that's requiring more than you have to give. Is there something that you need to put down for a time, even just for July or through August? Maybe it's a change in your routine or a lowering of the bar in some area just for the sake of rest. It's not a failure to take a break so you can return re-energized when it's time. You're allowed to rest. And so am I. Thanks for listening to this first season of the Permission Slips podcast. I hope these conversations have invited you to pay gentle attention to your life and to consider where you might need to be a little kinder to yourself. I'm honored to be on this journey with you, practicing self-compassion so that I can show up a little braver, gentler, and sturdier for the people around me. Remember, your life matters, and so does your legitimate need for rest, more than you know.